All right. In the last lecture, we talked about the importance of VA, and now let us have a look at the first step of vulnerability assessment. So, the first step is to have a legal documentation. You cannot just randomly go and start performing a vulnerability assessment. You first need to seek proper authorization from the owner because compromising or attacking a system without prior authorization is a crime. So, do not carry out random tests on different organizations' websites. First, seek proper authorization and then only move ahead in performing a proper VA. The next step, that is the second step, is to identify the scope. Now, there are some websites who have different domains. For example, let us consider Apple's website. One domain can be about MacBook, another domain of the website describes about iWatch, another domain can be about iPad. So first you need to identify the scope of vulnerability assessment because you may think this is just a small step, but actually it takes a lot of efforts. It takes many days to carry out a single penetration test or a vulnerability assessment. In penetration testing, you identify the vulnerabilities and then try to exploit and gain the access. When it comes to VA, you just identify the vulnerabilities and report it. So you have to first get yourselves clear with the scope. If the owner says no, you cannot scan domain 3 and domain 4, then you should not go for it. Okay, so you first must decide the scope of the assessment. The next is information assessment. Those who are very experienced when it comes to ethical hacking or VAPT always find out the information related to the scope. You cannot just start using random tools and then carry out a test. Those are script kiddies who just use the tools and start performing assessment. You first have to find out the proper knowledge when it comes to information assessment. So if you're trying to ask a girl or a boy for a date, you first find out the information, right? Where he or she lives, what is his or her favorite color, favorite food, right? You don't just ask the person on a date. So you first find out the information. No offense to people, I was just trying to give an analogy for you. Okay, the fourth step is vulnerability assessment. After you have decided the scope, after you have find out the information, now is the time to perform a proper vulnerability assessment in which you identify the different vulnerabilities. The fifth is penetration testing. As I said, when you are done with VA, you have to check whether those bugs will exist or not. Now, when it comes to a proper professional vulnerability assessment, it is not possible to do the entire VA manually. Okay, so you use automated tools like NetNesis, Acunetics, OWASP, Zap Proxy, Burp Suite tools. So all these tools are automated vulnerability scanners which scan the website automatically and then give you the vulnerabilities. All right, but again, it is your job to test whether the vulnerabilities are present or not. So in that way, penetration testing comes into picture where the attacker or where the hacker, the ethical hacker specifically, manually checks for each and every vulnerability present on the system. The sixth is gaining access. Now that you have got the information, you have exploited the bugs, it's time to gain the access. So gaining access is very important because if you are able to gain access, then there is point in reporting that vulnerability. So if you're getting any access, whether it is an admin level access or executive level access, you have to gain the access. Next is privilege escalation. Now let's say you are an attacker, you are an ethical hacker, and you are not a signed in member of the website, educational website. Let's say xyz.com is an educational website and you are an external pen tester hired to test the website. You don't have an account on the website, but now that you have performed a penetration test, you're able to get the access of a student who has enrolled in some courses. So that is gaining access phase. Once you have the access of student, you again test for bugs, which will give you the access of the administrator. And if you are able to get the access of administrator, then that is known as privilege escalation. Once you perform the privilege escalation and once you have identified all the bugs present in the system, it can be SQL injection, it can be database exploitation, it can be cross-site scripting attack, it can be brute forcing attack, or it can be any attack which we'll be seeing in the next upcoming sections of ethical hacking. So once you are done with all these attacks, it's time to write a report with everything. So you have to mention the vulnerability type, you have to mention the severity, you have to attach the screenshots, if possible attach a video in the report, then you have to write the steps, how you exploited the bug. Then after that you have to submit the report to the management, and if the management approves the report, you have to then provide the patch. Okay, you just don't have to, discover the vulnerability and leave as it is. It is your job to provide a proper patch. But again, one thing that I would like to tell you is that all these things are not done all alone by you. You have a team of analysts who do different jobs. So let's say there's a team of 5 people. 2 people are involved in legal documentation and report writing. 2 are involved in scope assessment, information assessment, and vulnerability assessment. You are involved into pen testing, and another one is involved in patch assistance. So in this way, a team works. And the final step is revalidation. You have to check if the patch is properly installed and if the system is secure or not. So all these 10 steps form a vulnerability assessment. So such vulnerability assessments are carried out in the organizations, and these should be carried out every month so as to prevent the threats. And these assessments one assessment takes at least 2 to 3 days. So depending upon the nature and the scope of the assessment, it may take longer or it may take short. But you don't have to rush and don't have to, depend upon the automatic results. And that is why it is important to have a team of people who can work together. For example, let us say you have a member who doesn't like to code and who doesn't like to hack into systems. So what he can do is he can deal with legal documentation, scope assessment, and report generation. There is one guy who is good at vulnerability knowledge, but he don't want to hack into systems. He is not that interested. So what he can do is he can carry out the information assessment, he can carry out the vulnerability assessment, and then provide you all the vulnerabilities. You can carry out penetration testing and all the steps 5, 6, and 7. 8 is already being done by the first guy. And 9th step, patch assistant, is done by the one who, has a good knowledge of programming skills and who knows how to patch the vulnerabilities. And again, 10th can be done by you. In this way, a team effort is required to carry out an effective penetration test. All right, these were the 10 steps for an effective vulnerability assessment. If you still have any doubts, please feel free to ask us in the Q&A section. We'll try to answer your questions as soon as we can. Great. I know this is a lot of information for you as a beginner, but trust me, this is the best course which will help you to get started from scratch to a cybersecurity professional. All right, keep the momentum going. I will see you in the next lecture where we'll talk about the need for cybersecurity in today's world.